Hi, my name is Matt Marcellino. I'm an attorney with Marcellino Moore, previously known as Marcellino and Tyson. We recently went through a name change, but it's still the same channel, same information, same folks, same information, same amazing workers at the office doing great legal work. We handle areas of family law, business litigation, civil litigation, business transactional work, as well as some employment and labor. Today, we're talking a little bit about family law, but something a little bit more unique than that, because in family law, I'm sitting across the table from Karen Porter, who's not an attorney. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
You know, but Karen is a real estate agent, but she has a very niche area, and she works very frequently here in the North Carolina area with family law attorneys, because when folks go through a unfortunate divorce, there may or may not be a marital residence where everyone is living, right? And a lot of questions kind of come up about how to, unfortunately, maybe have to sell the house or convey the ownership interest to somebody else, right? And what I mean by that, just some context, you may be going through this right now, or you may be contemplating it, but you have a family that lives inside the house, you've got kiddos. Mom and dad are probably on the mortgage and the deed, but maybe not. That's where it gets a little bit more tricky, where maybe both names are on the deed, but only one name is on the mortgage, and so forth. Well, if the parties are unable to keep the house, let's say the mom stays in the house, or that's the plan, but the mom's name is not on the mortgage, just dad's name. Well, the bank would like for mom's name to be on the mortgage, but they also want to make sure that mom can pay the mortgage, right? If dad's name is no longer on the mortgage, there's an obligation that's missing. When I say another set of pockets to pull cash from the bank's perspective, right?
Right, exactly.
Right. So it's kind of like, well, what do we do in this scenario? And that's where Karen comes in, because this is something that is problematic for a lot of couples, because sometimes, unfortunately, we have to sell the house, but we don't want to sell the house. Like, are there things that we can do to maybe avoid that, or otherwise protect the equity in the house, protect the house itself, and other steps? And Karen is one heck of a real estate agent who focuses on that area, which is really unique. And I've met Karen before, but I'm very excited about meeting with you today, because now I get to learn a lot more about what you do. And you can honestly help me out so I can better articulate this with my clients that might be going through that process. So welcome, Karen.
Well, thank you. Thank
Right.
you for having me here today.
Of course. Give me the rundown on what you currently do, right?
Okay.
And I mean, just kind of the floor is yours. And I may jump in with questions, but I'm eager to learn.
Okay. Well,
Right.
please do.
Right.
My name is Karen Porter. I'm a certified divorce real estate expert, also known as a CDRE. And that is a specialization that I got from the Alumni Institute out of California. Um, and it came out of the need where Laurel Starks, the founder, actually had just gotten her real estate license, had a friend that was an attorney, and said, here's a divorce case for you. And it's through her experience of the last 22 years and the landmines, and then also getting to know the intricacies of the divorce niche and the needs of the clients there, that this whole program came about. I have a couple other certifications with divorce, but this was really kind of the meat and bone, like the meat of it. And when attorneys talk to me and they see what I do and what was all required to get this certification, um, they realize that this is head and shoulders above any other certifications out there. I actually have CE every week with the Alumni Institute. It's at least an hour.
Wow.
And then I'm required, we offer Raising the Bar, which is a free CLE for attorneys and paralegals. The the fourth Wednesday of every month. And of course, attorneys get credit for that. But I'm also required to attend. And then we have a debrief with the speaker afterwards so we can ask questions and how we can better serve the family law community. I am a neutral. That's the biggest thing, is that I am a neutral third party brought in to handle the sale of real property. We don't handle personal property, although the personal property does go hand in hand,
Yeah.
when you're trying to move and everybody's got to get what is theirs out of the house. So to say we don't handle it, that's not part of our negotiations, but we definitely come alongside maybe what we call the in spouse, the spouse who's in the home trying to get out. And we have resources if they need movers, if they need packers, if they need help, organization trying to get out of the house. We have those resources, but we don't actually handle that ourselves.
Understood.
So and a lot of the things regarding personal property, it is outlined in the offer to purchase in North Carolina. So it is part of the contract, and we're just trying to make sure that the clients are adhering to those components of the contract that they have signed.
Okay.
So I'm a neutral third party, and that what that means is that I only handle the sale of the home. I will not help either party buy a home during the transaction. Now, I have had clients who, a year or two down the road, came back and said, "This was great. Would you help me buy?" And I absolutely do that. But during the transaction, I don't. I don't even represent buyers who may come in, say we have an open house, and they're like, "I love this house. I want to write an offer." I will not work with them. I actually have somebody who does open houses with me that is there to handle the buyers. So my divorcing clients are represented exclusively, which is a lot of the times where a traditional agent or an untrained agent sees that as advantageous. Now I've got two deals.
Okay.
And um, understanding what goes on, the emotional component as well as the financial component, um, it actually does not work in the agent's best interest to represent both sides. Because
Okay.
how do you represent the same client equally the best you can? I don't feel you can do it. Now, North Carolina does offer what that's called dual agency,
Mhm.
and they do offer it. I don't do it. I have done it years ago, but I'm older and smarter, and it's not worth someone feeling like they did not get equal representation
Dual agency means you represent the buyer and the seller
in the same transaction.
in the same transaction.
Yes,
That I'm an attorney. I'm
mm,
most certainly not allowed to do that.
exactly.
But hey, I'm just a lawyer, right? But when
Right.
you say that you're a neutral, like you do represent, I presume that you represent whose ever name is on the deed.
I represent the titled parties equally,
Okay, all right,
and that's on the deed. Um, like you said earlier, there is a deed of trust,
yeah,
which is the mortgage. And that could be that only one person is on that. And in North Carolina, we kind of nicknamed that the one in, two out rule. So let's
mm-hmm.
say, one spouse buys the house, maybe the other one's not working at home with the kids and financially it's just better and easier if it's in one spouse's name. Um, but it takes two to sell.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one in, two out is what we call it.
Gotcha.
So that is a big thing that we try to express to everyone who calls. It's a hard concept because a lot of times, um, perhaps the spouse who's on the mortgage and who's making those payments, they're the only ones making those payments. They will come in and say, "This is my house. You have to leave. You've never paid a dime for it. I want you out, or I'm selling it." The state has ruled completely different, that it takes one to buy, but it takes two to sell.
Mm-hmm.
So it's part of the marital assets.
Yeah, unless you have a free trader,
Unless you have a free trader,
which is not easy to get these days. At least not in my world of family law, right?
right,
That comes with a value.
it does. Right.
But yeah, so like, I think like for me, I haven't heard that term one in, two out. What you mean by that is if only one person's name is on the deed or the title, right?
The
But they're
mortgage.
married. But they're married.
Right.
Um, well, is it on the mortgage or the actual deed itself, right? So like if the husband's on the deed and the wife is not on the deed for whatever
For
reason,
whatever reason.
right? But it's because they're married in
Mhm.
North Carolina, it still requires both of their consent to sell the
Yes,
property.
correct.
Okay. Yeah.
Because there's marital interest
Correct.
in it.
Right.
Yes,
Which is where the family law attorneys show up.
exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay. And then
Right.
sometimes we do a really good job. And then sometimes we think we do a really good job without talking to people like you. Right.
Mhm.
Because you and I have discussed before in the past where if there's a litigation and there's a court order that results and the order says to sell the property as follows, we're
Mhm.
not to sell the property as follows unless the following things happen, right?
Right.
Such as if you can't refinance the mortgage to get so-and-so's name off within 18 months, then the property must be listed for sale, right? I can
Yes.
regurgitate the entire provision if you wanted me to, as I said here, but we don't need to. That's boring. But that's what it might say. You have
Yeah.
18 months to get husband's name off and wife's name on, or vice versa,
Mhm.
right? But you've told me before, even as of early as of today, that sometimes when we are drafting these court orders
Mm.
or even separation agreements, which
Mhm.
are contracts between a husband and wife, right, in
Yes.
North Carolina, and
Right.
it talks about how to handle the real estate, what we always refer to as the former marital residence, at least in my
Exactly.
world,
Mhm.
um, that sometimes we will draft this language that has always worked for us and that a judge will happily sign or whatever it may be, but it may not be up to snuff for other folks, right?
Right. Right.
And could you tell me a little bit more about those other folks and maybe how it should be done?
Sure. So one of the things that I have seen, which kind of surprised me, that we had to address right away was that it was ordered by a judge. Now, mind you, this has been a long time ago, that the home was to be taken out of one person's name by signing a quick claim deed. And a
Mm,
quick claim deed, which I'm sure you know, but it is an instrument where if you sign it, you're signing away your rights to the equity or any say about the home. You're giving away any rights that you have. Um, that's fine, except if somebody's name is on the mortgage. And if it's on the mortgage, um, when you sign a quick claim deed, you're signing away your rights to a home that you're still obligated to pay for. The
mm.
bank does not care about that.
You're right.
So they don't. The mortgage company doesn't care about it. So that's when we get into the refinance. Of course, when somebody calls me and they say, I want to keep the house, and it's written that I've got to refinance in 18 months, the first thing I'm going to say to them is, have you talked to a mortgage lender? But more specifically, have you talked to a CDLP, which is a certified divorce lending professional, which is another person in our community that specializes in divorce?
Okay.
And so I refer people to a CDLP, and we have several here in our area, um, to find out, can they qualify? You know, a lot of times we run into, especially if someone's at home with children and not working,
Mm,
a lot of times they don't have a credit score to be able to refinance. Interest rates are really affecting buyouts because not only do you have to refinance what the principal is that's there, a lot of times you have to pay out whatever the equity is because usually the equity is split. Let's say it's going to be split 50-50. Well, your loan is not just for the principal, it's for the principal plus. And now we're looking at 6 and a quarter,
right.
today it fluctuates, but maybe somebody had a 2.9,
Yeah.
which that's going to really affect their ability to qualify.
So when you say when you refinance it from essentially taking what remaining principal, the principal balance that
Hmm.
remains, right?
Hmm.
And if they do have to pull equity out of the house to pay the other spouse their 50% or whatever dollar amount the judge has
Right,
said, you're adding conceivably that amount of equity
right,
to your principal, and now you have a bigger mortgage than you did the day before you signed the document, right?
exactly,
Because the balance of the principal has now gotten that much larger,
exactly,
in addition to the higher interest rates that we currently have,
right. And
right?
so there's CDLPs who can help people sometimes navigate that, and they understand like um, if you get alimony or spousal support, whatever you want to call it,
Mhm.
and child support, or how does that factor into your income?
Right.
Right. So that's why I want you to talk to them first, because if somebody wants to keep the home, we want them to keep the home. There's enough changing going on in their lives and in their children's life, especially when there's children at home that are involved. We want them to keep the home,
Mhm.
just to have some normalcy for a while.
So in that context, do you think, I think the answer is going to be yes, but you could surprise me. But do you think the analysis for that individual who, let's use the stereotypical stay-at-home mom, unfortunately, right? So
Right.
she does not
Hmm.
have the credit score, she doesn't have an income currently,
Hmm.
right? But there is the likelihood of most certainly child support. If they have kiddos,
Hmm.
North Carolina, something is going to be paid,
Right.
right? And then there's the alimony or spousal support. And if there are some lending institutions that will include those dollars towards your income for your debt to income ratio when they're trying to say like whether or not they'll give you a loan,
Right.
um, then do you suggest that these people not only to speak to this
CDLP. Yeah.
CDLP, but also go talk to your lawyer because those numbers are really, really, really gonna be important with
Mhm.
regard to whether or not you can keep the house,
Mhm. Exactly.
right? Because it sounds like it would be potentially a nightmare if child support and or alimony, was established prior to that discussion happening,
Right.
because somebody may settle for a dollar amount less because they wanna be done. So a lot of times in our
Mhm.
world, the family law process, if it's not friendly and you're in litigation, it's very taxing, it's very emotional, it's exhausting for people. I mean, sometimes the value of the dollar might go down. It's very subjective.
Mhm.
And they'll say, look, I'll take 20% less. I just want to be done. And even if the lawyer's like, we should not do that, but I understand you're in charge. And if
Mhm.
that's what you like, I understand, but let's think that through. Some people want to do that, right? And maybe they do that too early in the process.
Mhm.
And then they go and they talk to the CDLP, and they would have those dollars that they might have given up that they might have been entitled to receive could have been every bit that they needed to then keep the property, and now you get a mortgage on it, right?
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. So one of the things when you're taking support of any type into consideration is the lenders talk about a 636 rule. So that means you have to have 6 months of on time, consistent, full payments and also 36 months beyond that from the loan, right? So in order to qualify to use that, those are the parameters. We call it the 636.
Okay.
And so I know people that have said, "Well, it was on time. I've been getting it for 8 months, but he missed, like, December and January was only partial." Well, it now starts all over.
It all starts it
It
start
start the clock for the 6 months. Like, you have to have
okay.
6 months before
When you're going through the approval
when you're going through
process?
the approval process and for 36 months after.
Wow.
So if you have a child that is 17 or even 16, right, and it's
Right,
gotta be for 36 months, but they're losing that support at 18, you don't get to count that completely.
right.
So, and that's why it's so important to talk to the CDLP because I know that sometimes when people are wanting to have, like, there are people because their name is on the mortgage,
Mhm.
they want to pay that mortgage, make sure that that mortgage is getting paid to protect
Right.
their credit score,
Mhm.
right? And so maybe they'll say, okay, well, I'm going to pay the mortgage until everything is finalized, and I'll give you, I'm making up a number, $1,000 beyond that.
Sure.
But once that you refinance or the house, once the mortgage is out of my name, then I'll pay you the whole support, whatever
Mhm.
that looks like. Um, those are things that a traditional mortgage lender will go, can't count it. But sometimes your CDLP will know how to document that to show that this money isn't going away. Right now, it's just being used a little different. So that's
Okay.
why I highly recommend that if you want to keep the house, talk to them first, right? Um,
And then it sounds like it's really important that if the CDLP and you, right, are putting together this I don't know if package is the right term, but putting together this plan, right?
sure, yeah.
Um, it sounds like the an advisable step is to have the attorney involved,
Mhm.
aware, maybe not involved, right? You don't want us involved
Aware,
in it, but
right, right.
aware of what's
Mhm.
going on because um, if the CDLP needs there's only so much that we can do maybe as lawyers, whether we're going to call it spousal support or child support,
Right.
possibly, or distributive award, which I don't know if that's super helpful there. But like, you know, whatever language we ultimately use in a separation agreement or a
Mhm.
court order,
Mhm.
I presume you really want that to jive with whatever you and the CDLP are doing for the benefit of the recipient who's trying to stay in the house and otherwise keep the mortgage and so forth.
Right.
Because if I use language that's contrary or a lesser amount,
Mhm.
right, that could pose a problem for the CDLP because maybe what they're looking at isn't supported by the documents I've drafted.
Exactly.
It may be the same thing. It's just a different name, but unfortunately, because it's a different name or it's phrased differently,
Right.
that could be a hole in the boat.
Right. Because they're the ones who work with the title company, right?
Hmm.
And ultimately, everybody's gotta get title insurance on their house,
Yeah.
right? And if something, comes up that doesn't jive with what the title work should be, that's where we start getting then we can't get a loan, we can't do a
Right.
lot of things. Most people do wanna keep the house. I think it's like 67% ultimately wanna keep the house, um, but it's a very high percentage of those, it's like 78% that have to sell.
Okay.
And most of those people that sell, even if you get to keep the house, most of the people that sell within 3 years because they don't think about the maintenance, he did yard work, not to stereotype, but he did yard work and she did the flower beds and,
Right.
he whatever, however that worked. Now you're doing all of it by yourself,
Mm.
and did you account for that?
Right.
So there's a lot of components to it.
What is your role? So somebody that's trying to keep the house,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
Um, what is your role? How do you help them out, right? If they're using a CDLP to figure out ways to financially keep the house,
mhm,
uh, what are you doing in that circumstance? Because the house isn't being sold. They're not trying to sell the house in that
right.
circumstance. What are you doing in that scenario with them?
So I don't really have a role with them if they're
Mm,
going because I am a real estate agent. I'm just a trained real estate agent.
mm,
But if they need a CMA, fair market analysis, or something like that, I can help with that. Um, but I'm usually the touch point because most people have a mortgage lender, but they don't know what a CDLP is. And yet, they've been brought in a lot of times from the family law community. I just want to make sure they get good information,
mhm.
that they've got the right people around them. And, you spoke specifically about somebody who wanted to keep the house. We also want to make sure it's written properly for the person who's trying to get out of the house and
Right.
wants their money. Because ultimately, if it's not done properly, it sabotages everybody.
Mhm.
And we've got to start over.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nobody likes to start over.
Nobody likes to start
Nobody likes to
over.
start over.
Yeah.
So in then let's say that the CLDP,
CDLP. Hmm.
CDLP, thank you.
Hmm.
Let's say this individual is unable to work their magic and the house has to be sold,
Hmm.
right? That's where you would step in.
That's where I step back
Yeah.
in.
So then
Yeah.
explain to me from that point moving forward, what do you typically see? What are you doing in that scenario?
So something that I do, well, I start out, I'm a neutral. So I communicate and treat everyone equal but separate. Because a lot of times when a lot of agents like to communicate with everybody together, and really what that breeds is just a lot of hostility, especially um, when you're negotiating with a buyer per se. So you're the buyer and we're negotiating, but I'm also negotiating with two people who I've had some that are ordered by the judge not to speak to each other.
Right.
So, um, sometimes when I'm brought in and I tell them, look, you don't have to communicate with them anymore about the house. Everything comes through me. It is twice the work for an agent or what my traditional sales are, but it's well worth it because everybody feels safe that they can speak to me from wherever they're at. And then I go back and negotiate between the two of them to see if we can come up with even just a counteroffer
Right.
to an offer. Um, but I will go and visit the home. And a lot of times what you have is you have somebody, like we said, somebody who's living in the home. Refer to them as the in-spouse. And then we have an out-spouse. And that's the person who is no longer in the house because in North Carolina, you have to be separate
Hmm.
addresses for a year with the little asterisks next to that. But for the
Right.
most part, it is a year.
Yeah.
And so they've already got their clock ticking because usually the house is the last component. But they're the outspouse, but they feel like they're being left out of everything. And so to make sure that we communicate with them just as much as the other one, especially about the sale of the home. Now, when someone has questions about the process, I don't communicate that. Said, you know what he asked me? Or you know what she asked me? It was the silliest thing you've ever heard. That's not it at all. It's if you have a question about the process, because selling a home is different than buying a home. And a lot of people have already bought the home, so they're used to that process. But some people have never sold a home. Or if they were married and they sold a home before, everybody divided and conquered and had their own to-do lists,
Hmm.
right? To get out, to sell the home, to get out of the house. Um, but in this case, if you have questions, that is between that client and myself. But if it's something about the home, like, hey, the air conditioner broke. Okay, well, that's something everybody needs to know. And hopefully that is spelled out too. What about repairs, within the order or the agreement?
Okay.
Yeah,
So you share information between the two owners that's pertinent to the sale of the house or the condition of the house.
correct.
But each individual may have their own questions about the process.
Hmm.
You answer those questions, but that discussion you had with the in-spouse, you wouldn't go and update the out-spouse. Hey, I
No,
just had the following conversation. He or she was asking questions about how do we do this in the sale? You don't actually go and have that conversation with the other spouse because
right.
they're not asking, and you don't have any obligation to say,
They don't need to know.
Here's the conversations, right? Right. So you're essentially a real estate agent as well as sometimes a mediator between the two homeowners, right?
Yes.
Who are going through, in all likelihood, a very difficult process just with
Yes.
their marriage, right?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Is there any tools that you think that you use that helps these individuals sell the house either more quickly or more efficiently? That's unique to any other house that's being sold, right? The distinction is that one family is going through a divorce, the other one is not, right? Do you think that the serving as the neutral
Mhm.
and not speaking to them really at the same time, unless it's about a broken air conditioner or something like that.
I don't even speak to them at the same time about that.
Okay. So you go back and forth, which
Mhm.
so you're right. So it's twice the amount of work for you.
Mm.
But do you think that that's probably how you were taught and trained through your programs to handle
Yes.
it that way? And
Yes.
what do you think the reason for that is?
So I can give you an example. There was a couple that was selling their house at the beginning, which is unusual, but they needed the money to actually establish two households. And so they agreed they wanted to sell. So we sold the house and they insisted on doing the walkthrough together because they both lived there, which that's their choice. But normally speaking, if there's an in spouse and an out spouse, absolutely not. It's not done together, but I will report to them. I take pictures during the walkthrough. So I share those and let them know what my findings were,
Mhm.
just as what the in spouse was communicated. But somebody had a question about a process. And I had said to them, there's no dumb questions in this process. And somebody asked a question, and the other one said, that's a dumb question. No, it's not. Yes, it is. No, it's not. Well, she likes you better. She likes you better. And I just looked at him and said, I don't like either of you right now. And it kind of shut it down. It's let him, I'm here to do a job to protect your equity. And right now you're throwing up barricades to that. So
You really operate more on the client is the house,
it really is.
right?
Hmm.
Yeah, the individuals own it and so forth, but it's a
Yes.
transaction that you're trying to accomplish, and you're really looking out for the benefit of the house, maximizing its value, et cetera, et cetera.
Hmm.
And the result of that is husband, in spouse, out spouse gets some type of percentage from the house, and it maximizes their return,
Exactly.
right? So
Exactly.
you try to cut out the emotional in that scenario bickering that probably wasn't helpful to the process at all, right?
No, but after that, I did not have
Mhm.
any problems with them at all. There was
Right.
not really a peep out of them. They
Okay.
understood that I was there to advocate for both of them.
Okay.
Huh.
Yeah, that is uniquely different than a typical sale, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, and we also understand I understand that, you know, traditional agents look at um, a divorce as a distressed property, but it's not. It's really not. The people are in distress, but the property is not.
Sure.
So, I have seen listings from untrained agents that say, divorce, divorce property, motivated sellers. And I'm like, well, now the sharks are circling. And
Yeah.
in the state of North Carolina, we are held to a code of ethics. We can't share anything about our clients. And so that's really those comments when I see those in public remarks or in agent remarks is really kind of heartbreaking
Mhm.
because you're costing that family money. And anybody who works with divorcing clients realizes that every penny is critical and not all money is the same. We were talking a little bit about the equity and how we can offset that. There's equity in the house, but maybe somebody wants to keep the cash in the bank account. You can keep the equity in the house, but then we got this 401k over here, and sometimes all money is not the same, meaning that the equity in the house is not liquid. So you may be getting that money, but you've got to sell that
Mm.
house before you can have access to any of it. Same thing with like a 401k. So those are things to think about that all money is not the same,
Right.
especially in the sale of the home.
If there was one recommendation you would give to a husband and wife right now that are either going through the process of trying to sell the house or they're contemplating it, what would that one recommendation, that one word of advice that you would give to them to consider or what have you?
Well, the first thing I would tell them is that if you think a divorce is expensive with an attorney, wait till you have one without.
Okay.
And they
Yeah,
don't realize that until it's too late,
right.
you know? Um, I feel that the condition of the home usually reflects the condition of the marriage. And so the biggest obstacle we run into is the marital home is not taken care of. And it's usually because people don't want to be there. It's representative of something bad at that
Mm,
point. So, as much as it pains someone to take care of the home, maintenance is a huge issue with the marital home. And that's usually where people lose the most equity, is just not maintaining. And I try to come in and say, strategically, if we had any money, where would we spend it so it would be most advantageous to protect that equity
mhm.
in
Okay.
that. So,
That makes sense. Even if there's no rhyme or reason for it, just, let's call it the sad energy or
mhm,
environment of the inside
exactly.
of the house will have an impact, a negative impact on its overall value,
Exactly.
even if it's you just need to open the blinds, right? And just
Exactly.
get some sun in there, right?
Exactly.
But yeah, I can
Mhm.
understand. That's interesting. I've never thought about that before.
It
Um,
is.
I really appreciate it. This was super helpful to me. I'm sure it's helpful to everybody that's watching. I mean, I really appreciate you coming in. I really do. I will be definitely calling you more frequently when I'm going through the process of drafting my contracts and court orders, making sure that we don't have to do anything twice in the future. And it sounds like you've got some proposed language that you can maybe even share with folks like me.
Mhm.
I look forward to receiving that from you. I do, but I appreciate you coming in. And if you have any questions for me, obviously you can just reach out to our firm. If you have any questions for Karen, obviously reach out directly to Karen. But hopefully this was helpful. Wish you all the best and stay tuned for our next videos. Thank you.